the greatest mystery in Marilyn Monroe's final 72 hours is not what the records reveal, but what the surviving official record cannot prove. You have probably heard the story before. A famous woman alone in a bedroom, powerful men somewhere beyond the frame, doctors, telephone calls, political secrets, organized crime, missing evidence, and a fatal night followed by decades of suspicion. It is a story told so often that its most dramatic elements can begin to feel like established history. But are they? When you separate the authenticated record from later recollection, repetition, and rumor, something unexpected happens. The familiar story becomes less certain. Events that appear in almost every retelling lose their documentary foundations. Precise conversations have no verified recordings. Alleged visitors have no authenticated visitor logs. Claims of wiretaps arrive without surveillance records. The mafia appears in the same historical landscape, but not in evidence connecting it to the death. And the federal file that many people imagine as a sealed vault of answers has actually been publicly available in various forms since the 1980s. It was reprocessed in 2012 and posted online by the FBI in January 2013. It is real, but its existence does not prove murder, surveillance, or a political operation. That distinction matters. In this episode, we will not ask you to accept the loudest theory. We will ask you to examine what each theory requires. A fact establishes a narrow point. An anomaly exposes what the fact cannot explain. Then comes the question, does the gap support a conclusion or only the possibility of one? This is Marilyn Monroe, the final 72 hours. And tonight, the mystery is not only how she died, it is how uncertain evidence became an apparently certain story. Chapter 1, The Last Weekend. What can we honestly reconstruct about Marilyn Monroe's last weekend? The fact is stark. The eligible official and authenticated primary records supplied for this investigation do not provide a detailed chronology for August 3rd, August 4th, and the early hours of August 5th, 1962. There is no authenticated final days telephone log in this evidence, no original police report, no ambulance dispatch record, no verified visitor list, no contemporaneous statement from the people reported to have been inside or near the house, and no county coroner file through which we can independently audit the medical findings and reported timeline. That absence creates the first anomaly. Popular accounts often describe the weekend almost minute by minute. They assign precise times to conversations. They quote final words. They describe Monroe's mood and identify who called, who visited, who became alarmed, and who arrived after she stopped responding. But where does that precision come from? Not from the official federal and institutional records available to us. This does not prove that every reported event is false. It means something more limited and more important. Those events cannot be promoted to verified fact without the underlying record. Consider what a reliable final hours reconstruction would require. For a telephone call, you would want a company log, an authenticated recording, or a contemporaneous memorandum created by one of the participants. For a visitor, you would want a photograph, a security record, a travel record, or a statement made close to the event and preserved with a clear chain of custody. For an emergency response, you would want a dispatch entry, a patient care document, or an institutional record identifying the personnel, location, and time. None of those categories is represented in the eligible evidence supplied here. So, the fact is that later narratives contain great detail. The anomaly is that the supporting primary documentation is absent. The question is unavoidable. Are we remembering Monroe's final weekend, or are we remembering the most repeated version of it? The difference is not academic. Memory changes. Later interviews can introduce details that were never recorded at the time. Separate stories can merge. A claim from one person can be repeated by another, until two repetitions look like two sources, even when both lead back to the same unsupported origin. This is how narrative certainty grows without evidentiary certainty. The exact phrase most commonly associated with the official conclusion is probable suicide. Even that language demands care. Probable expresses a judgment based on available evidence. It is not the same as a witnessed act, a note with authenticated intent or mathematical proof. And in our evidence package, the underlying Los Angeles County coroner documentation is not available for direct inspection. We cannot independently verify the exact reasoning, toxicology, or procedural foundation from an eligible county record. This does not authorize us to replace that reported conclusion with homicide. It does the opposite. It requires restraint in both directions. An incomplete record does not prove suicide. An incomplete record does not prove murder. It proves incompleteness. That is the central tension of the last weekend. The closer we try to move toward the bedroom and the final hours, the less direct documentation we possess. The official sources become strongest not at the scene, but months earlier and decades later, at a public presidential event, in federal files, and in records describing how those files became accessible. The emotional temptation is to fill the empty hours, but once we do that with unverified claims, we are no longer reconstructing history, we are writing a solution. So ask yourself, if the surviving record does not let us see the final weekend clearly, who benefits when speculation is presented as memory? Chapter 2, The Kennedy Connection. What does the official record actually prove about Marilyn Monroe and the Kennedys? It proves a documented public connection. On May 19, 1962, President John F. Kennedy attended a birthday salute at Madison Square Garden in New York City. The John F. Kennedy Presidential Library identifies Monroe in the archival record connected with that event. The same institutional archive documents a reception at Arthur Krim's residence later that day. Monroe is listed among those associated with the reception. National Archives material also identifies photographs connected with the public event and the gathering that followed. Those are facts. Monroe and President Kennedy occupied the same documented public and social spaces on May 19, 1962. The anomaly is what later narratives ask those facts to carry. A shared event becomes evidence of an affair. An appearance becomes evidence of continued private access. Political proximity becomes access to classified information. Then that supposed knowledge becomes a motive for silencing her. But each step requires new evidence. A photograph can establish presence. It cannot, by itself, establish intimacy. An event record can establish attendance. It cannot establish the content of a private conversation. Fame can create access to powerful people. It does not automatically create access to state secrets. The supplied Library of Congress material does not identify official correspondence between Monroe and President Kennedy. The supplied Department of State historical records do not provide evidence that she participated in diplomatic or national security matters. The supplied FBI record does not validate the claim that she possessed government secrets. So the fact is documented proximity. The anomaly is the enormous political narrative built around it. The question is, where is the evidentiary bridge between the two? The alleged relationship with Robert Kennedy presents an even sharper problem. Later stories place him inside Monroe's final day. Some versions describe a confrontation. Others imply an attempt to retrieve information or prevent disclosure. But the eligible evidence supplied for this investigation contains no authenticated visitor record, photograph, travel document, contemporaneous statement, or official finding placing Robert Kennedy at Monroe's residence during those final hours. That does not prove he was somewhere else. It means the claim remains unverified. This distinction is essential because political allegations can sound self-confirming. The more powerful the accused person, the easier it becomes to explain missing evidence as evidence of the accused person's power. No record? It must have been removed. No witness statement? The witness must have been pressured. No verified call? The log must have been altered. This reasoning cannot be tested because every absence becomes confirmation. A theory that treats both evidence and the lack of evidence as proof can never be disproved. That is not how a responsible investigation works. The correct sequence remains fact, anomaly, question. Fact: Monroe attended a documented event involving President Kennedy and a reception on May 19th. Anomaly: later stories describe relationships and political consequences far beyond what those records establish. Question: what independent primary evidence confirms those additional claims? In the supplied official record, the answer is none. The FBI file adds another layer of misunderstanding. The Bureau maintained records concerning Monroe, and the National Archives identifies her file as 105 HQ 418. But the presence of a federal file is not unusual proof of a conspiracy. Federal files can contain inquiries, administrative communications, reports from third parties, and information that was never validated. The FBI itself warns that historical vault material may not represent the Bureau's current beliefs or positions. This means a memorandum inside a file must still be evaluated. Who created it? What was the source? Was the information firsthand? Was it corroborated? Did the agency reach a finding? A government document can authentically record that an allegation was made without proving that the allegation was true. That principle is easy to forget when the names are Marilyn Monroe and John F. Kennedy. Their fame magnifies every fragment. A public event begins to look like the opening scene of a secret history. A file number begins to look like a classified operation. A redaction becomes an implied confession. But archives do not work that way. The documented Kennedy connection is real. What remains unproven is the chain connecting that public relationship to Monroe's death. And without that chain, the most provocative question is also the most disciplined one. Are we investigating evidence involving the Kennedys or interpreting every gap through the gravity of their name? Chapter 3, The Mafia Angle. Does the official documentary record connect organized crime to Marilyn Monroe's final hours? The FBI vault contains separate public files for Monroe, Sam Giancana, and Johnny Roselli. National Archives finding aids also identify Giancana and Roselli within federal records concerning organized crime and the broader JFK assassination records environment. Those are facts. The United States government collected records on organized crime figures. It also maintained a file concerning Monroe. The anomaly appears when separate archives are treated as though they form a single case. They do not. The supplied FBI material does not identify a joint Monroe-Giancana investigative file. It does not identify a joint Monroe-Roselli file. No authenticated communication, surveillance transcript, financial record, operational instruction, or official finding supplied here connects either man to Monroe's death. So the fact is that the files exist. The anomaly is that their simultaneous existence is often presented as a relationship. The question is, what document actually joins them? In the evidence before us, none does. This is a classic danger in historical mysteries, association by archive. Imagine 3 labeled boxes in the same warehouse. 1 contains material about a celebrity. 2 contain material about organized crime. Their presence under the same roof proves that the archive holds all 3 collections. It does not prove that the people inside those files acted together. Even appearance in the same index can be misleading. An index helps researchers locate names and subjects. It is not a verdict, a conspiracy chart, or an evidentiary finding. A credible mafia theory would require more. It would need to identify a person with operational involvement, establish access to Monroe, document a motive grounded in contemporary evidence, and connect that motive to action during the relevant period. Ideally, those points would be supported by independent records rather than one later account. The supplied official record does not do this. That does not mean organized crime lacked influence during the period. The existence of extensive federal files demonstrates official investigative interest in organized crime subjects, but broad historical context cannot substitute for case-specific evidence. Otherwise, any famous death from the era could be connected to any person who appears in an FBI organized crime archive. The mafia angle often merges with the Kennedy angle. The proposed logic is that Monroe knew politically dangerous information. Organized crime had an interest in that information, and someone used criminal intermediaries to silence her. But notice how many unsupported steps are required. First, there must have been an intimate relationship. Second, that relationship must have given Monroe access to sensitive information. Third, she must have intended to reveal it. Fourth, a political or criminal actor must have learned of that intention. Fifth, that actor must have ordered or encouraged a killing. Sixth, someone must have carried it out. Seventh, multiple institutions or witnesses must have concealed it. Each proposition needs evidence. One unverified claim cannot be used to prove the next. The chain is only as strong as its least supported link. Here, the official documentary record supplied does not establish the first links, much less the final ones. Fact, federal files on Monroe and organized crime figures exist. Anomaly, later narratives combine them into one operation without producing a shared primary record. Question, is the mafia angle an evidence-based conclusion or a story assembled from historically powerful names? The honest answer is that the supplied official record does not establish mafia involvement. That answer may feel less dramatic, but it protects the investigation from a dangerous mistake, confusing a plausible period setting with proof of a specific crime. Chapter 4, August 5th, 1962, the night she died. What can the eligible evidence tell us about the night at the center of the mystery? Far less than most retellings suggest. The evidence supplied for this episode does not include the original police report, the official county autopsy, an authenticated toxicology report, an ambulance record, a telephone company log, or contemporaneous witness statements. Without those materials, we cannot responsibly narrate an exact discovery time. We cannot verify who first recognized an emergency, who entered the room, what each person observed, or precisely when authorities were contacted. We also cannot independently confirm particular drug concentrations, the condition of the stomach, pill residue, bruising, or an estimated time of death. Those details appear in excluded secondary materials, but the underlying eligible county documents are absent. That is the fact. The key local records are unavailable in the evidence package. The anomaly is that the public story is extraordinarily specific. The question is, how much of that specificity survives when we enforce a primary source standard? Very little. Even the widely repeated probable suicide conclusion must be understood correctly. Probable is not certainty. Suicide is a conclusion about manner and intent, not merely the presence of a fatal substance. Yet the absence of the underlying coroner record also means we cannot audit how that conclusion was reached. What follows from that? Not that homicide becomes the default. The absence of proof for one conclusion is not proof of its opposite. If the official conclusion was based on evidence no longer before us, we must acknowledge that limitation. If critics challenge that conclusion, they must still produce affirmative evidence for an alternative. Suspicion is not affirmative evidence. Neither is an imperfect investigation. The alleged ambulance episode demonstrates the problem. Different later accounts have claimed that emergency personnel responded earlier, that Monroe was alive, or that some form of treatment occurred. But the supplied evidence contains no eligible dispatch record, care report, hospital entry, or authenticated contemporaneous statement proving any of those events. We cannot use an absent ambulance record to prove that an ambulance came. We also cannot use it to prove that none came. We can only say that the claim is unverified. The same rule applies to the alleged final telephone calls. Without authenticated records, quoted farewells cannot be treated as verbatim history. The emotional power of a line does not authenticate it. This is where the mythology of a famous death becomes strongest. A final sentence offers closure. A mysterious visitor offers motive. A delayed call offers concealment. Missing evidence offers a villain. Real historical records are rarely so complete. But uncertainty should not be mistaken for license. When evidence ends, responsible narration must stop with it. Fact: essential local records are not present. Anomaly: later accounts claim detailed knowledge of the night. Question: if those accounts cannot be verified, what conclusion remains defensible? Only this: Monroe's final hours cannot be reconstructed with high confidence from the eligible evidence supplied. The mystery survives, but not because murder has been proved. It survives because certainty has not. Chapter 5: The Cover-Up. Does a flawed or incomplete record prove that someone covered up a crime? It creates a reason to investigate. It may justify skepticism, but a cover-up is an intentional act, and intent requires evidence. The FBI's public record history is one place where language matters. Monroe's files were not declassified, only now. The Bureau states that they were released under FOIA in the 1980s, reprocessed in 2012, and posted to the vault in January 2013. That is the fact. The anomaly is the recurring claim that a recent release suddenly exposed a long-hidden truth. The question is, did later online publication reveal proof of a death conspiracy? The supplied official material does not show that it did. Redactions can be frustrating. They can conceal names or details, but redactions may arise from legal exemptions, privacy rules, administrative procedures, or the condition and custody of records. A blacked-out line is not automatically evidence of homicide. Similarly, a transferred file is not a vanished file. The FBI explains that some historical originals may now be held by the National Archives. NARA explains that FBI holdings are organized through numerical classifications and case citations, making research difficult without an exact file number. Complex access can look like secrecy from the outside. Sometimes it is only bureaucracy. That does not mean every unanswered question is trivial. The absence of original local investigative records in the supplied materials prevents a full independent review. The lack of authenticated phone logs blocks verification of final communications. The lack of contemporaneous witness statements makes it difficult to compare early accounts with later versions. Those are real evidentiary problems. But the fact is, an incomplete record, The anomaly is the scale of the missing clarity. The question is whether incompleteness resulted from an organized effort to conceal a killing. No eligible evidence supplied here establishes that conclusion. A true cover-up theory would need to identify coordinated actors, demonstrate what they knew, show what evidence they altered or suppressed, and connect their actions to a shared purpose. Ideally, those claims would appear in authenticated records created close to the event. Instead, the familiar theory often works backward. It begins with the assumption of murder. Every discrepancy becomes evidence of staging. Every missing document becomes evidence of removal. Every conflicting memory becomes evidence of pressure. Every redaction becomes evidence of political protection. That method can create a seamless story, but only because no possible discovery can challenge it. If a document appears, it proves the conspiracy. If it does not appear, its absence proves the conspiracy. That is not a testable conclusion. There may have been mistakes. There may have been lost records. There may have been decisions that would not meet modern expectations, but none of those possibilities, alone or together, establishes a coordinated murder cover-up. The official documentary record does not prove that the Kennedys caused Monroe's death. It does not prove that organized crime caused it. It does not prove that the FBI investigated it as a federal homicide. It does not verify a government wiretap, an ambulance intervention, a secret political diary, witness intimidation, or removal of final telephone records. That is not a defense of institutions. It is a description of evidence. And perhaps that is the deepest twist in this case. The mystery has endured because the record is incomplete. But the same incompleteness that prevents absolute closure also prevents the most dramatic accusations from becoming fact. Conclusion plus cité. So what happened during Marilyn Monroe's final 72 hours? The answer preserved by the eligible records is narrower than legend and less satisfying than certainty. We can document her presence with President Kennedy at a major public event and reception on May 19, 1962. We can document the existence and release history of her FBI file. We can document that federal archives separately preserve records on major organized crime figures. But we cannot use those facts to prove an affair, possession of state secrets, mafia involvement, wiretapping, homicide, or a cover-up. We also cannot independently reconstruct the crucial final hours without the underlying local records. Fact: the archive preserves fragments. Anomaly: the fragments have been assembled into competing stories of certainty. Question: which story survives when every claim must carry its own evidence? For now, none of the sensational alternatives clears that standard. The phrase probable suicide, as commonly attributed to the coroner, should never be misrepresented as absolute proof, but unanswered questions should never be misrepresented as proof of murder either. Between those two errors lies the real mystery. Not a solved conspiracy, but an incomplete historical record surrounding one of the world's most famous deaths. If you value mysteries examined without sacrificing evidence, subscribe to Mind Flip Mysteries and join us for the next investigation. In episode 6, we will enter another case where the popular story and the surviving record may not tell the same tale. Until then, remember, the most compelling answer is not always the best supported one. And sometimes the final clue is